Well, since I didn't play it, that's fine. Okay. In friendship, selfishness and selflessness really is important. I grew up a kind of person who is a talker, and I thought that being a good friend was carrying the conversation. And so I would be in a conversation and I'd just be yammering on and talk. And one day my friend Jill has taught me so much about being a good friend. She doesn't always do it tactfully, but she has definitely taught me how to be a good friend. I remember one time we were hanging out with a group of our girlfriends, and at the end, as people were leaving, she's like, oh, that one girl, she wears me out. And I was like, what are you talking about? I like her. And she's like, she doesn't ever shut up. She monopolizes the conversation. All she does is talk, and she doesn't let anyone else have a conversation. Does she think she knows all the things and no one else knows anything and nobody else has anything good to say? I can't believe that she doesn't ever let anyone else talk. And I just hadn't even noticed because I'm also an over-talker. I mean, as a kid, I talked all the time. My grandma, I remember, she tried to pay me to be quiet. She'd be like, I'll give you 5 cents if you can be quiet for 5 minutes. And I never got my 5 cents because I just I have a niece who's just like me. My brother got my child. She just she doesn't ever stop talking. And it wasn't until my friend Jill pointed out that over talking, being a person who talks all the time and doesn't invite other people in the conversation is actually really selfish. Because Joey is right, we're all selfish. In one way or another, we are all selfish. And we can be very selfish in our conversations. There's this great quote from Margaret Miller. She says, as a matter of fact, have you ever noticed that most conversations are simply a monologue delivered in the presence of a witness? I read that quote and I was like, oh my God, that can be really true. And I used to be the monologuer. I really used to be the person who's like, and I was like, I'm just carrying the conversation, right? But Jill has taught me to be a selfless friend. You shut your trap sometimes and you say, what do you think about that? You notice when you are monopolizing the conversation and you invite other people into the conversation. And I just never put that together because I grew up being a little chatty Cathy all the time, constantly talking. And so that just was what I thought was the right way to do it until I heard this quote and my friend Jill called me out on it. Jill was saying about someone else, but I'm thinking to myself, she could totally say this about me to someone else because I was an overtalker. And so I have learned to be a better listener. I have learned to be a person who realizes when someone hasn't said something in the conversation and be like, what do you think about that? I haven't heard from you in a minute. What are your thoughts on that? Hold on, such and such. You've been talking a lot. Well, Dale, what do you think about that? Trying to include other people in the conversation because I realized that being the person who always is the talker in a conversation is really kind of selfish. And I can still be very selfish. I'm still working on it. I'm a work in progress when it comes to being selfish. But that is one thing, as one situation where I have learned to be a little bit more selfless. The Bible talks about the importance of being a selfless friend. Being selfless makes you a good friend. Jill also taught me, I already told you how she came and helped me with my floors, and she hates doing housework. I told you that story. When I just turned 50 recently, and as a single person, I remember thinking about a year ago, there's not going to be anybody throwing me a birthday. I know this is petty, but there's nobody to throw me a 50th birthday party. It's going to be just another Thursday. And it really made me really sad. And Jill knows that birthdays are a big deal to me, and so back in November, she said, what would be a perfect birthday for you? I want to make sure that you have a good birthday. And so she started from then, and she paid for us to go bowling. And she, not only because my birthday was on Thursday and my party was on Friday, and she's like, they took me out to dinner before my birthday party, but she also came, she was super busy, on Thursday and took me out to dinner also, and got me a gift. She's a very selfless friend. She's really good at looking at what you need and doing that thing for you, or paying attention to what you say and asking you about that thing. She's really good at that. She's really taught me a lot about being a good friend. And I think, like, where did she learn that? Well, both of her parents are believers. She grew up, her dad was a pastor of a church when she was in like middle school, high school. And so I have to believe that she learned these things from her parents who learned it from the Bible. And the Bible has a lot to say about being selfless. So here's one in Philippians 2:3-4. Instead of being motivated by selfish ambition or vanity, each of you should be humble, or should in humility move to treat one another as more important than yourself. Each of you should be concerned not only about your own interests, but about the interests of others as well. And in Galatians, Paul writes, "For you, brothers, were called to freedom. Only don't turn your freedom into an opportunity to gratify your flesh, but through love, make it your habit to serve one another." Our mandate as Christians, what makes us different, some faith is all about, like Buddhism and some of those Hindu, like some of them are all about me getting myself to where I need to go. But the Christian faith is all about how can I serve other people. The Christian faith grew gangbusters. It was some plague, I forget which one, but there was like a plague in like London or somewhere, and people were clearing out because they didn't want to get it. It was back before they had like modern medicine, but the Christians stayed, risking their lives to treat the sick. And Christianity in that space and in that time went like crazy. The people who lived were like, why are you people staying here? And it was because they were selflessly staying, risking their lives to be good friends and neighbors to the people around them. I mean, even Jesus showed us what it's like to be selfless. Jesus had his friends. They knew he was the Messiah. They knew he was God's son. The story that I'm about to show you takes place, it's literally the last time Jesus hangs out with his friends. It's called the Last Supper. It was the last day that Jesus was alive and free. And it was Passover meal, which is around this time, Passover meal. And so what they would do is they would get together with all their friends and have this big like Thanksgiving type of a meal together. And so Jesus, they're having their Passover meal, and in the middle of the meal, he stops to wash their feet. Here's the story. In John 13, he says, "It was just before the Passover festival, and Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. And so he got up from the meal. He took off his outer clothing and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, 'Lord, are you going to wash my feet?' And Jesus replied, 'You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you'll understand.' 'No,' said Peter, 'you should never wash my feet.' And Jesus answered, 'Unless I wash you, you have no part with me.' 'Well then, Lord,' Simon Peter replied, 'not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well.' And Jesus answered, 'Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. You are clean, though not every one of you.' For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. 'Do you understand what I've done for you?' he asked them. 'You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set an example that you should do as I have done for you. For very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Jesus said to Simon Peter, I'm your Lord and I'm your teacher. He's saying, I am the highest, like I'm a king. I am from heaven. I am a big deal. And also, I'm going to get on my hands and knees and I'm going to wash your feet. You guys, back then, they didn't have a sewage system. The streets were like dirt and stone and sand, and then animals were there. And they didn't have those bags that horses have nowadays to catch stuff. You know, the streets were filthy with human and dog and animal excrement. Their feet were gross because they're wearing sandals. Jesus, the Lord of all creation, the Son of God, the big deal, the teacher, got on his hands and knees and washed excrement from their feet. He did that for his friends. That's amazing to me. And you know what is, as I read this, I had another he even did that to Judas. Judas was there, the one he knew was going to betray him. He even washed that guy's feet. Jesus showed us that true friendship means being selfless. It means even though you might have a position of power, you might be a person who's important, and still you should be washing the feet of your friends. You should be humbling yourself before your friends. You should be selflessly taking care of your friends and honoring them. And so what does that look like for us? Because we wear shoes. and foot washing is, I think if you went to your friend's house and said, I want to wash your feet, they'd be like, no, that's weird. So what does that look like for us practically? Well, one, when it comes to conversation, don't be the overtalker. Learn to listen. I had to make a conscious choice to learn to be a better listener because I was an overtalker. Now I think I've swung a little the other way. I get in a conversation now with people, I'm like, I don't know what to talk about because I don't want to just talk about myself, you know? Ask them about themselves. Make sure they're being included in the conversation. And also pay attention. You know, if George tells me he's working on his house and he can't wait till he gets his bathroom finished, I say, George, next time I see him, George, how's the bathroom coming? I pay attention to what's going on in his life and I ask him about that. Right? Or I know that Paula's busy with baseball and all the things, and so maybe I be like, hey, how about I just bring you guys dinner tonight so you don't have to cook? It's paying attention to what's going on in your friends' lives and being willing to show up for that. My friend Jody, the day I had to put my dog down, I wanted to walk, long story short, I wanted to walk him there because he liked to walk. He liked to walk to the vet. So she followed me in her car in case he couldn't make it to drive us there. Because he wanted to walk and I wanted to walk him there. And then she drove me back and sat with me when I was crying. That's a good friend. A good friend says, I see what's going on in your life. What can I do to support you? What can I do to be there for you? I might have to sacrifice. You know, Jill sacrificed, she's super busy. She sacrificed to come help me lay flooring. She's got bills like everybody else. She sacrificed her money to throw a birthday party for me. My friend Jody, it's awkward to sit with someone who's crying. It's weird. And she sat through that to sit with me while I was crying over my dog. That's what good friends do. And that's what we are called to do. Jesus said to us, you're not greater than anyone else. Go out and do what I'm doing. Go out and serve your friends. Go out and wash their feet. How can you wash your friends' feet? What excrement is in your friend's life that they need some help washing off? What can we do to share the gospel of the Lord? How can we show the love of Christ to our friends by paying attention to what they need and giving it to them? Because I would argue with Joey that there are truly people who truly give selflessly with no agenda in mind. That's who we're called to be as Christians. We are called to be people who serve selflessly without a hidden agenda, without it being for our own good or our own gain. And so my challenge to you this week is think about your close circle of friends. What do they need? How can you give them what they need? How can you be a better listener? How can you provide for them in a way that is really meaningful for them? Ask yourself, are you being a good friend? Are you being a selfless friend? And all of God's children said, Amen.